Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm kind of shuffling some things around here. Thank you so much for joining us for the live video today. We're going to see how this works because if you remember last time we tried to do a live video, Facebook kind of went kaput on us. So I am going to try to bring up the video on my phone so I can monitor that and just make sure nothing goes awry this time. So let's see here. We will be sharing this to YouTube in a little bit as well. There it is. Yeah, Facebook's being a little wonky there. So, okay, awesome. So we're going to go ahead and get started today. Welcome to our first book review. This is going to be a new series that we're going to be starting here for our parent company, ZS Music Publishing. These are going to include some Little Jammers products and some non-Little Jammers products, but some things that we feel like we want to show you out there in the internet world. So we're going to be reviewing some of our products that we have out available on various different marketplaces and online as well. And I figured why not start with one of the very first books that I've written, which is called the Rock and Roll and Drum Set Method book. So this has been a book. This is a book that's been out for a little bit. It is a book for beginning drum set students as well, so it's geared more towards younger students, kind of like Little Jammers is, but it can be used for older students if you kind of improvise a little bit. So we're going to be kind of talking about the book a little bit, and so we'll kind of dig into the book and show you some of the pages there as well. But before we get into that, just a little bit about myself in case you don't know who I am and who this mystery person is on the screen. My name is Zach Seckman. I am the writer and developer of the Rock and Rollin' Drum Set Method, just like how I've written the Little Jammers curriculum. I'm the owner and lead instructor here at Seckman Music School in Wichita, Kansas. I am self-published and an up-and-coming composer and content creator, again, under the name ZS Music Publishing. That's kind of the company here. We're available on many teacher and music marketplaces online. I do have a Bachelor of Music Ed from Kansas State University. Go Cats. I hope the women do well in the March Madness, since it's March right now. I almost forgot the month. I've been teaching privately since 2011, so almost 11 years now. And then in my free time, because what content creator has free time, I like to play video games, cook. I mostly play The Sims, City Skylines. I also just got a Nintendo Switch, and I've been starting to play Fortnite a little bit, so we'll see about that free time here. So what we're going to do, we're going to kind of dig into the book a little bit, kind of give some highlights here, kind of show you what it's all about before we dig into some of the pages here. So I started writing the book roughly about 2019, 2020, somewhere in that time frame. I was trying to remember, but I totally forgot when it was that I had started writing it. It is a full color book. All pages in the book are full cover, except for the pages that just have black on them. But the book contains mostly colored pages, and that's going to kind of help the student out a little bit. And the book also uses icons for the instruments and abbreviations as well. Again, that way the student can get a little help learning the instruments before we throw them into reading on the staff. The book is written for a 5-piece kit, so your traditional bass drum, snare drum, and then 3 tom drums. But if you don't have all those, that's totally fine. The book is adaptable, and you can kind of switch things out if you'd like, or kind of rearrange how you do. You don't have to teach the book cover to cover. You can kind of jump around based on how you feel the student will respond. Concepts that we've included in the book include body percussion. We'll kind of talk about that when we get there. Learning the instruments, and then reading music on the staff. So when we say on the staff, we actually do a simplified 3-line staff in the book. And then in book 2, which we'll talk about here in a couple weeks in another video, we'll dive more into 5-line staff reading there, but we get the students used to reading basically left to right, and then down, and then left to right, down, left to right, and then we add in the 3-line staff at the end. So again, we'll talk about that more when we preview the book here a little bit. And then throughout the book, it's all of that is kind of chopped up into 6 different units. The book includes 57 patterns or songs. So we call the songs patterns because essentially that's what drum set playing is. It's a series of patterns that the students will learn. And then there's also throughout the book 11 activities, which include composing activities. So students get the chance to write their own beats. They get to kind of write their own music, essentially, here. And so there's different things for the kids to work on and learn to get more comfortable and more familiar with the drum set. So here's something, here's going to be what we're considering the free gift in the description. And of course, that's what's in the description in the YouTube video as well, because we're going to download this and send it off over to YouTube. Throughout the video, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching a replay of the video, comment rock and roll, and I will reach out and I will send you a free desk reference copy of Rockin' and Rollin'. It will be watermarked, but it's free. That way you can check it out before that, and it's the full book. So you'll get a chance to get the full book and review that and see if that's something you'd want to purchase for your students, or if you are a student yourself, if you want the book. But we will do that there for you. So drop in the comments, rock and roll, and I'll kind of pop back over to remind you in case you drop in later on in the live video. Comment rock and roll in the comments, and we'll after the live video we'll send you over a free copy of the desk reference. So without further ado, let's go ahead, let's pop on over here. So this is the Google Sheets version. I write all my books in Google Slides because it's so much easier and it's free. So we don't really have to worry about all of this. This kind of just talks about the what the book's about and everything like that, and that covers it. Here's the contents of the book here. So the book in all the PDF file is 100 pages long. So you're getting about 96 pages of content. At the end, we do have a vocabulary glossary practice tracker if that's something you feel your students need. And then, of course, everyone loves a certificate, so we have a page for a certificate in there as well. So when we say that the book is full cover, we mean that the book is full color from almost cover to cover. And so this is what the instruments will look like. So these are the icons, and then basically kind of the abbreviations. So we go through here. Each instrument is a different color. So the snare drum and the low tom do share the color blue, but they're different shades of blue. That way students don't get mixed up. So, and then we also abbreviate things to kind of help students learn a little bit more. So because Unit 1, we talk about body percussion or playing the drum set on the body, essentially. So right hand's going to be RH, left hand's going to be LH, right foot's going to be RF, and then left foot's going to be LF. So we give students a chance to compose using those body limbs there. And then we have the abbreviations for the instruments down here. So snare drum is SD, bass drum is BD, right cymbal is RC, so on and so forth there. So those are basically kind of the different abbreviations. And that's important because we'll use those later on. For the first part of the book, we rely on the icons here. So then basically the first activity that the students do is more of a listening activity, but they get to play. So they get to go ahead and get on the drums and play. So we ask the students to play each of the instruments 4 times. Now, I actually am currently working with a student who does not have a crash cymbal, and he said, hey, I don't have that on my set. Is that okay? Perfectly fine. I've also worked with students who don't have 3 toms, or I have students who only have 1 tom drum. That's totally cool, because this page is really more to kind of get their ear acquainted with the sounds of the instruments that are in their drum kit. So if they have more, they can kind of fold this page in half and write, you know, my little tom, or, you know, if they have another cymbal. Now again, this book is geared more towards the beginner, so they may not be on a full, like a big, what I call a monster kit. So like tons of different toms, 2 different snare drums, 2 basses, tons of different cymbals. Book's written for a 5-piece kit. So that's activity 1. Unit 1 dives into body beats, or what I call body beats here. So we kind of chop the body into quarters, and then we practice the different limbs, because we're going to play the patterns using different limbs on the body. And so we go through here, we help the students learn those different body parts. And then we get into what we call the body beats here. So the body beats are basically kind of getting the students antiquated to playing different limbs or using different limbs at the same time. So we start off with the feet, and then we go with the hands, and then we kind of do a combination there on this page. And then we continue that a little bit more over here. So we practice kind of different patterns of those. Then here on this next page, we practice here on what would be the book page 8. Computer's running slow. No surprise there. This is a refurbished computer. So then we do 2 limbs at a time. So again, because a lot of the time when we're playing our patterns, when we're playing our beats on the drum set, we're playing with 2 limbs, 2 or 3 limbs at a time. So we want to get the student used to playing like that. So that's what we start off with. And then here we've got our second activity, which is writing those body beats. So students have a couple chances where they do 1 limb at a time. And they could do any combination that they want. They could do all just hands, they could do just feet, or they could do all 4. And then body beats 3 and 7 right here, across pages 9 and 10, they will write 2 limbs at a time. So I've also had students that are like, hey, I'm not really kind of comfortable, or I can't remember the shapes for the different body parts, or I can't remember the abbreviations. Can I write the instruments in there? And I've allowed that. That's totally fine. So whatever the student's most comfortable with, that's totally cool in the book, because flexibility is key, especially in today's age. Being flexible with our students, being flexible with our teaching styles is the key here. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Our third activity. So we've already hit 3 of our activities just within Unit 1. Third activity is coloring. So I've kind of put a note here. Basically, the students will grab all these colors. They can use highlighters, crayons, colored pencils, whatever they want, and color in the drum set here. And again, that way they get familiar with the colors when we get later on here into the icons. And then an optional for older students, if you do use this for like a middle school student, or even maybe a high school or even an adult student, they can pick 1 color for all the drums and then 1 color for all the cymbals, since that's basically what a drum set really is. But again, kids can respond pretty well to colors here. So again, we're pretty flexible with that. And a note for the older students, we are actually working on another version of the book for older students. So it's not going to be as colorful as this, but it's going to pretty much be the same. So we are going to try to have that out late this year, early next year. So late 2022, early 2023. Then we kind of go on a little bit more. Now that we're going to get started on the actual drum set, we talk about holding sticks and different parts of the stick. And I always like to laugh with my students, say, yes, there is a part of the stick called the butt. And they love to laugh about that. So we talk about different parts of the stick, kinds of sticks, and that for right now, we try not to get too picky when picking a stick. So don't get picky about your sticks, since there's different ones. So generally, if a parent goes out and buys a drum set and say, oh, we have these sticks along with it, great, let's talk about that. And we also talk about the fulcrum, where to hold the stick, and all that good stuff there. Throughout the book, you'll see these little parts down here that say, hey, and then it's a highlighted part. That's the vocabulary there. So we throw in the vocabulary, and we try to highlight it there a little bit for the student. And then when I'm in my lesson, so a lot of times I actually use these books for my online students, since I currently don't have any in-person younger drum students. I have them read that aloud. That way they're reading it, they work on their reading, and then they're also listening as they read it as well. We also give a couple of other different tools that the students might use throughout the book, including, we talked about sticks. They might want a metronome, whether that be online or like a physical metronome, drum key, throne, and then different writing tools. There's a page you can go over with your students, or you could skip it as well. Then, since we're starting to get onto the drum set here, we go into our next activity, which is where we basically do a matching. So they can go back to the first page here. Let me bring it up on the side. So right here, they could go back to activity 1 or the page here where it says, what are all these instruments? they can come back to reference that. But this is basically an icon matching, so they draw a line from the name to the icon that it is. So we're going to take a real quick pause right here, and just to remind y'all, if you're joining us in the middle of this live video, drop the key phrase in the comments below, rock and roll, and then we will send you a free desk reference copy via PDF on Facebook Messenger, or we'll find another way on YouTube to send that out there if you're watching that, watching the replay on YouTube. So now we're going to go ahead and move into Unit 2 here. So we're going to start getting the student on the different drums here. So we start off with bass drum and snare drum. And Unit 2 is called the bass camp. So, and we have another vocabulary here. We actually have 2 vocabulary words. So this is kind of the starting page of each of the units. We talk about what instruments are going to be used, and then we kind of talk about like where their placement is, and then what's going to play it and everything. Then we move on. Now, bass camp has, I believe, 11 or so patterns because we just want the students to explore different combinations of playing the bass drum and the snare drum here. So they have a chance to play snare drum just on this pattern 1. Pattern 2 is solely bass drum. And then we kind of just do combinations of each. Again, because we're working on patterns. The students are learning patterns throughout the book to get them ready to play on the actual staff here. So we go through, there's a lot of different combinations of snare drum and bass drum that we have throughout here. And we talk about also, at least with my students, I talk about how we can turn these into fills later on. So we talk about fills at the end of the book. And then we go back and say, hey, pick a pattern and we can turn that into a fill. Unit 3, we get into the hi-hats. And I also point out to the students, so if you see here, the 2 hi-hat symbols kind of look the same, but we add the F because the icon with the F means that we're going to play it just with the foot, and then the icon without the F means we're going to play it with the sticks. And so throughout the book, basically what we do is, if we're not playing it with the foot, I have the student close the hi-hat completely. Or if they're old enough, I say, go ahead and keep that closed with your left foot, but you're going to play it with your stick. So again, you see here we've got the bass drum and the snare drum. They are still grayed out, but they're outlined in their colors. Again, this is to show the student, hey, we've already learned these instruments, but we're going to include them into this unit here. So altogether from Unit 2, we have 10 patterns. I see that there. I said 11. We actually have 10. And then we start off Unit 3 with pattern 11. And I actually... I kind of stole pattern 11 and pattern 12 from Siri because I always make the joke that you can make your phone beatbox. And so this is kind of a beatboxing rhythm. And then once the students learn, what I like to do, once the students learn pattern 11 and pattern 12, I find a drumless backing track. And then so something like Back in Black without the drums. And then I have the students play this pattern. They love it. They absolutely love being able to play along with a song that they know or they recognize and say, hey, I can play the drums with this song. So already you're kind of getting that excitement and engagement building. The rest of the chapter here, we kind of go along, since we've added both the hi-hat with the sticks and then the hi-hat with the foot. Again, we do a number of different combinations here. This pattern here, walking feet, because this will come up sometimes in songs or in certain grooves that they learn. They just go back and forth with their right foot and their left foot. And because they kind of do that alternating pattern, I call that the walking feet there. So again, a number of different combinations of that. And then as we're working with our patterns, because if you notice, we just put the icons and then the beat numbers there. So sometimes I may have students read traditionally, say, okay, go left to right and then down, left to right, just like you're reading a book. Sometimes I may say, start at the bottom and then come up. So then, even though it's the same for now, we change up patterns later on in the book. Even though it's the same, like on pattern 14 here, I may have them go left to right on the bottom row, come back up, left to right, come back up, left to right. So I challenge them a little bit in that sense that they read differently. So that would work something here on pattern 16. So like, for example, instead of going from top to bottom, left to right, we go bottom, top, left to right. Or sometimes I may say, hey, play all of the beat ones first, play all the beat twos, play all the beat threes. So then they'd go bass, 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 hi-hat, bass, 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 hi-hat. So again, kind of change it up a little bit for your students and make them think a little bit, to kind of think outside of the box. Because sometimes that's what music is about. Sometimes we want to think outside the box. Next, we're going to roll into Unit 4 here. Unit 4 is called Try the Toms, because we're gonna introduce the students to all the tom drums here. This one, I believe, goes on forever, I think, because again, just the kind of the infinite amount of combinations we could do with the drums. So again, since we've already learned the hi-hat, it's grayed out, but we have the green outline there, and then we talk about placement, and then basically kind of what each of the toms would sound like there. So again, this is just kind of a way for students to start exploring the tom drums, starting with the high and the low and the medium, and then we go medium and low for a little bit. There we go. There's the page that we're looking for. And then we throw back in the high tom and do a combination. We also introduced rests here. So we don't do traditional rests. Perhaps I could have done a Z there to be more like, I'm going to get this wrong, or for Kodai. My training's failing me there. But I just put an X as an example there, and then we cover that. We cover what rests actually look like later on in book 2. But we introduced that, and then, again, we can go any direction on here. We could go from left to right and then down, left to right and down, left to right down. This one I particularly highlight to students because this is one of I mean, that's your kind of traditional fill right there. If you're going along and you play your toms, and then you get back into your groove there. So this one, I explained, this is a really easy fill for them to learn. So again, we kind of go along with that, and then right before we hit Unit 5, we have another activity. So this is where students can practice kind of drawing their icons, or they can color in the icon, or they could just write the instrument abbreviation. But this is where they get the chance to write their own pattern here, and then title it as well. So for me, and you'll notice in some of our products as well, for me, since I really love to compose and write music, I put that into the products. I put that in the books that we write, or like the manipulatives. Give the student that chance to write their own, be creative. So if we're thinking in terms of Bloom's taxonomy, highest form of thinking is creating. So I really kind of push towards that, and again, kind of make students think outside the box. So there is activity 5. Just a quick reminder, if you're popping in the middle of the live, drop the key phrase in the comments, rock and roll, and we'll send over a free PDF of the desk reference version. Again, it's a watermarked version of the book, but you can use that for reference if you decide to perhaps buy the book for your students or for your school or whatever you need it for. So now, since we've covered all the drums and the hi-hat, we're going to now introduce the 2 cymbals, the crash cymbal and the ride cymbal here. So this is where things are going to get interesting, because now we could start to make full-on patterns of what students would be used to, or what we as drummers would be used to playing. For the first couple patterns here, just the first 2 actually, if I can read. We have the students practicing playing just the cymbals, so this might get a little noisy, but again, this is kind of where they discover, you know, how hard we can hit, and sort of different things like that. So here I'm pattern 27 and 28, it kind of gives them that opportunity. For the hi-hats here, you can decide. We don't have the F in there. You can write that into their book, or just say, hey, try playing this with just the foot, or try playing this with just the hand this time. So we got that going on. Then we introduce 2 at a time. So just like what we did body beats. So now this has been 1 limb at a time. Now we're going to go 2 at a time and start introducing students to that. So this is what I call, I actually really like this pattern a lot because I always tell the students you're going to kind of chop your body in half. So I have the students play the right cymbal with their right hand at first. And so we go, since the bass drum's played with the right foot, I go, think of your right, 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 right. And then when we play the hi-hat with the foot and then snare drum with the left hand, it's left, 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 left. So they can go back and forth, left, right, 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 left, 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 and things like that. Again, this is getting students used to playing multiple limbs at a time. It's kind of getting them used to hearing multiple instruments at a time as well. We can continue that idea, playing 2 instruments at a time. This one we kind of go, it's a little bit different. So we have the hands playing together. So then it's the right hand and the left on the snare, right hand on the medium tom. Play those at the same time, and then high and low at the same time. Again, you can kind of change this up if your student doesn't have all 3 toms. You can kind of change things around here. Same thing here, pattern 31. Again, working on playing 2 instruments at a time. And then, before I go on to that page, go back up. There we go. Activity 6, twice the fun. So this is kind of the same thing that we did above, but now they get a chance to write their own pattern with 2 instruments at a time. Again, getting them used to it, kind of slowly getting them in here. And then now, since we've learned all the instruments, we've kind of worked on it. This is kind of the first full pattern that they play, or what I call a real pattern. So here they'd be going back and forth, kind of like what we were doing with the right cymbal and the bass drum, the right side, and then our left side would play the hi-hat foot and the snare drum would go right, left, right, left. This would be another opportunity for you to throw on like a drumless backing track and have them play along with that, and explore different speeds here. Because if you notice throughout the book, we don't set speeds. We don't have set tempos for the songs. We leave that up to the teacher. That way they can kind of, if the student needs to play something a little bit slower to kind of get used to it, they can do that. Or if the student, can handle a challenge, they play something fast. Again, they can do that there. So that's what that's there for. Then also here we introduce the repeat. So we do use a full repeat right here. Again, kind of get students used to that. So basically, they would play each of these rows twice, and if the teacher wants to, they can repeat that as many times as need be. So then over here, we kind of next pattern 33, we change things up a little bit. It's kind of the same thing. We still have a repeat. Then here's the cool thing. So we work on coordination with pattern 34. So now what we're doing, we're kind of going back to a pattern from Unit 2, which is from Bass Camp, and now we're practicing going bass, snare, while our right hand, there's the word, while our right hand is playing the right cymbal on all 4 counts. So sometimes what I'll do, there's multiple different ways to get the students into that, but sometimes I'll have them start on the right cymbal and then do bass, 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 and then introduce bass, snare, bass, snare, bass, snare. So then now they're playing a very simple rock and roll pattern here. Again, this is kind of get them started working on that. So now they're playing 3 limbs at a time, or 3 limbs throughout the pattern. The next pattern, pattern 35, they're going to be playing 3 at a time. So this is where we get more into a traditional rock and roll pattern here. So we have our right side bass and right cymbal going at the same time, and then the snare drum on 2 and 4. So 1, 2, 3, bum, bum, kind of like that. So it took us a little bit to get to this point, but again, the point of the first half of the book is to again kind of discover and explore and get used to playing all of the instruments here. Then we just kind of go throughout here, change some things up. Now we move over to the right cymbal, or the hi-hat cymbal, and then we work on what I like to call the I'm writing this in the 3rd book right now. Windshield wiper, what I call the windshield wiper technique, where we go from ride, and we move over to the hats. So again, that's kind of what the students work on there. And then from here, we get into the next unit of the book. And before we do that, just a quick reminder, if you're watching either the live or the replay, drop a comment. down in drop in the comments below. Where else would you drop a comment? And comment rock and roll, and we'll send over a free version of the desk reference copy via PDF. That way you can kind of look through the book and think if this is something that you want to purchase for yourself or your school or for some of your students here. So, Unit 6. I saw a comment. Where was it? Awesome. Thanks, Shane. I really appreciate it. I know, I think we talked about this. One of my business coaches just commented, and he's loving it. So I'm glad at least someone's watching here. So here in Unit 6, we finally introduced the staff. So like we said at the beginning of the video, this is a simplified staff, almost like what elementary teachers would use for teaching solfege. So except we kind of scale back the staff a little bit, and we put the instruments on here. And this page right here, we go over an overview of what that would look like going forward in the book here. So we show all the instruments first, all the drums and cymbals, and then we do just the drums and then just the cymbals here. And again, we kind of show students that they're going to move, and I like to remind my students that the staff is almost like a ladder. So your lower sounds, or what your feet play, run beyond the bottom of the staff. The higher you get up, the higher the sound, or the instruments that you use to play with your hands are higher up on the staff there. So again, another activity here. Since we just learned where the instruments are on the staff, then we kind of switch things up. Now we get students used to reading the abbreviated instruments. Notice they're still the same colors, but we take away the icons, and now the circles with the abbreviations in them become the icons, and that's what they read on the staff here. So we have a name matching activity here. Then we have activity 8, which is a word scramble. So we don't have a teacher key for this one, but these are all instruments and vocab that they've learned so far in the book. I'll just give you that for the key. Then the upcoming patterns that we have throughout the rest of the book, since Unit 6 is technically the last unit in the book, we're putting everything on the staff. So these are actually patterns that the students have learned already. There's only one new thing that we introduced really briefly in Unit 6, which is playing on the rim of the snare drum. Again, this is basically just to kind of introduce students to playing on a different part of the drum. We do have a page earlier on in the book that explains the different parts of the drum, but then we revisit it here in the latter half of the book. So here we kind of change up the snare drum a little bit. Instead of a filled-in circle, now it's a white circle with the colored letters in there. We don't really revisit this in the second book. This is something I'm going to introduce a little bit more in the third book, which is what we're working on currently as of March 2022. So we kind of introduced that a little bit. We review that, again, playing on the rim, and then we also review rests here. Again, we kind of took a different approach, and rests are the X's throughout here. And then we introduce the instruments, some of more of the instruments again after that. And then, again, we go back and do some of the patterns that we've played before throughout here. We just put it on the staff. Again, since the students will already know how to play these patterns technically, they just look different. So that's something I try to remind the students. They're the same thing that you played before, but they look a little bit different. It's almost like putting on a new shirt, if that analogy makes sense. Probably not, but that's okay. That's okay if the analogy doesn't make sense. So we don't use all the patterns from the previous units of the book. We just kind of are a little bit selective of what we do. Again, the goal is to get students used to reading on the staff, albeit a simplified staff, but that's kind of more the goal here. And then here we do kind of that same, what I was talking about, the windshield wiper technique, going back and forth. We kind of practice that here. And then sometimes we've combined patterns. So we go back and forth playing these. You know what? I wonder if that didn't get changed. Oh, the book's published now. I'm not going to worry about that. Anyway, so then we get to the last. So the last pattern that we played in Unit 5, we then repeat here. So this is kind of the same thing. It may look a little wonky, the fact that we've got a couple different icons stacked on top of each other. As long as the students know what to play, that's again more the aim of that. So then, kind of to finish out the unit here, we've got a couple more composing activities. So activity 9 and activity 10 give the students a chance to compose their own patterns here. The first one, activity 9, go back, there we go, uses just a handful of instruments, and then unit 10, or activity 10, uses all the instruments here. And I like to remind students they don't have to use all the instruments. If they just want to compose a pattern using bass drum and snare drum, totally fine. I'm totally cool with that. That's their composition there. And then finally, we have our final pattern. So this is 57, where we kind of go through, and this is what I was talking about down here. So the last two systems down here that has the tom drums on it and then the crash cymbal. That's kind of what I referred to earlier when we talk about doing fills. So then they have their high tom, medium, medium, low, 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 and then the crash cymbal there at the end. So this is basically something that we can do, and I've had some colleagues before someone sent me a video, and now I'm blanking on who it was, but they sent me a video of one of their students playing this along with Back in Black, and it sounded so good. It sounded so good. So that is technically our last pattern in the book. There's the word. And then we have just a couple bonus activities here at the end. The first one here is a word search where they go through and basically the words that we've worked through, or the vocab that we've worked on throughout the book is in here. And then the final review is basically, you know, what are all the names of the instruments? And there's some fill in the blank, true or false here. There's some matching here in the final review. And then last but not least, they fill in the names of the instruments there. And then we basically have at the back of the book, your general back of the book from the method book sort of things. We got a vocab page, practice tracker, and then like I mentioned earlier, a certificate, what I call the awesomeness certificate, because once you get through the book, you are a certified awesome drummer. And then, of course, it tells the students, hey, you're ready for book 2. So again, we'll be talking about book 2 a little bit later on. Here at the very back of the book, we do have a couple other staffs for students to, again, compose their own songs if they want to. And then here at the very end, we talk about, this is basically for teachers, it walks you through the book a little bit more. So that is going to be the end of our kind of the review of the book here. So if you are interested in the book, after you receive, again, if you drop your comment in the comments there with rock and roll to receive your free desk reference copy. These are available currently on Amazon. Book 1 is currently available on Sheet Music Plus as a PDF download, but Amazon, you can have that printed and bound and shipped to you. Mine are actually coming next week. I finally ordered my own copies of the book. And then for other PDF versions, teacher marketplaces, they're currently available on Top Music Marketplace soon. I'm going to get those uploaded here in next little bit. And then, of course, teachers pay teachers as well. So that is going to be the end of our live video. Do feel free to ask any questions that you have in the comments below, or if you'd like to receive your free desk reference copy, drop the key phrase rock and roll down there in the comments and we'll get that to you. So take care of yourselves, stay healthy, have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.